let me take a second to just introduce her in case you're not familiar with how amazing she is. First of all, we go back like almost a decade, we were saying, so we've known each other for a long time, and Liza is knowledgeable and friendly and kind, and a very talented writer. Hello was her debut novel, and her second novel was The Assignment, which came out in August of last year, and she has 2 adult nonfiction books and some short stories and articles. She is a graduate of UW-Madison with a degree in education and the mother of 2 sons and now a grandmother, which I think is cool because they're super cute.
Yeah.
And she is super talented and very knowledgeable. She's my go-to person when I get stuck in a story or I feel like I can't do it or I don't know what I'm doing. I always call Liza because she can always navigate me toward an answer. So welcome, and I'm excited to hear from you. We would request that you stay muted throughout the conversation. You can hide your video, have your video on, whatever you want. If you have questions, you can post them in the message board in the chat, and we'll try to get to as many as we can at the end. And I think that's everything I have. So I'm just going to turn it over to you, Liza.
Amazing. We have so much that we're going to be doing tonight. And I just want to say what an incredible honor it is to be here with all of you. And many of you are authors, so or writers. You write for newspapers, magazines, and all sorts of amazing things. So please feel free to put in the chat what you've written, what you've published, because we are at a library and we want them to have your books. So, hey, put it in the chat. And I'm certain our library people would be thrilled to take a look at your titles and make sure they have them. So I know you guys are amazing, and I'm so impressed with all of you. And it's an honor for me to be here with all of you. So I am going to get right to sharing my screen and right to the PowerPoint that I am going to be sharing. Let's go to slideshow. Play from the start. All right, so here are my books, The Assignment and Hello. Hello was my debut novel. The Assignment, as Danielle said, just came out last year. Paperback is coming out August 31st. Okay, what is unique about my books is that I never write from the perspective of one character. There's always something at a minimum of 2 characters, but actually that's actually not true. It's a minimum of 5 characters. Hello has 5 narrators. The Assignment has many, many more. And character development for me is absolutely everything. It's what drives the story. And this for me is key. Know your characters better than you know yourself or anyone else. Why? Unless you have a photographic memory, which I do not, there is no way I know what happened to me when I was 2 years old or 5 years old. Yes, I have certain memories that have shaped me, but there are things that have happened to us that have shaped us that we don't even necessarily remember. But it is our history that shapes us. It's our experiences that shape us. You need to know all of those experiences, whether you put them in your novel or not. That doesn't matter. You've got to have an intimate relationship with your characters. And you truly are going to know these characters even better than the people that you live with in your own home. You're going to know them better, than your spouse. You're going to know them better than your children or, a neighbor or even a best friend, because you are going to know their intimate thoughts, what shapes them. So for me, this is the key. And why it's so critical for you to dig deep and deeper and deeper, uncover layers. We're complex. Human beings are complex. And I'm certain all of you have read a villain, and the villain feels flat because there's no nuance to it. And so for those of you who have read my novel, The Assignment, and you think about Mr. Bartley, now Mr. Bartley could very well have become a villain. He starts off as this favorite teacher. He gives an assignment that's, horrific. He pushes back. But I've heard from readers that, by the last chapter, they are feeling so deeply for him and have this unbelievable compassion. That kind of work in character development takes nuance, and it means understanding that psyche. For me, what is absolutely, I start out by interviewing my characters. So for those of you who have a background in the news or writing for magazines and having to interview real people, that's the same thing, except for they're make-believe, they're in your head. But have a conversation, and instead of waiting for the other person to answer the question, you're going to be answering that question and digging as deep as you possibly can to get the most profound answer. And I always start out in, some kind of notebook. This is just you can see it's just such a mess. And this was for the assignment. And I said, if we go to the top right, that's the thing about some people. They underestimate youth. They don't value their opinions or believe that they are capable of knowing what they want because they haven't lived. So how could they, But we have lived. Parents who walk away, relatives who have, let's see, a peer who has committed suicide. I'm here to listen, to be a voice of change. And, it's one of those things that really shocks me when people say, teenagers don't think this way. Well, I can tell you that is, I'll get to there in a second. So this is one of the things that I put down, interview your characters, write open-ended questions, which means don't ask yes and no questions. Ask them, what is it that irritates you about your best friend? Or, what is it that your mother does that you outwardly might find embarrassing, but inwardly you're so grateful that she does it. And so right there with a question like that, you're creating conflict because inwardly, your character is like, oh, I love it when my mom does this, but I really don't like it when she does this in front of my friends because, again, open-ended questions. Now getting to the heart of everything. As I said, for me, interviewing characters is at the heart of my story. I actually do this work before I start writing the novel. And I believe that's key because when you understand your characters, their psyche, it makes a difference. But I also interview, real teens, adults. I interview people to get more information about what's important to them. I ask them about, their high school. I ask them questions that are specific to my novel. So for example, in my novel, my main characters live in a small town called Riviere. And then there is a cousin that lives in Milwaukee. So I interviewed all these faces that you see in front here. These are teens that I interviewed, except for the mom in the middle on the far left. I interviewed these teens and asked them about what their experience is at their high school. And they also, each one of these individuals became characters in my novel. So on the left, that's Cade, upper left, that's Cade. On the upper right, that's Mason. For me, it was like, oh, I love your name. I'm inspired, by the kindness that you showed me. Cade came up to me. I was talking at Arrowhead High School, and he came up to me and he introduced me, and I asked him his name, and he said Cade, and I said, wow, I really love your name. Would you mind if I stole it? And he goes, hey, great. And that's how I came up with my character. But the thing is that kindness, the way he treated me, really impacted how I shaped my own character, Cade. On the bottom right is Blair, and bottom right is Blair. So Blair, I asked Liam in the upper right-hand corner, please tell me the name of a girl who you have so much respect and admiration. And immediately he said to me, Blair. And in my novel, The Assignment, I took those characteristics of this young woman and created my own Blair. Her sister is Ava. I made Ava a mom. The Schaefers are on the bottom left, and I have a Dr. and Mrs. Schaefer, or I'm sorry, Dr. and Mr. Schaefer, and Rosalie Schaefer is actually a doctor in psychology. So for me, when you have, when you know people and there's something that really sticks out, that helps in my mind with character development. Now, the grandfather in my novel for The Assignment was inspired by my own grandfather. I had a clear and intimate, relationship with my grandfather. We were so close, and my grandma. My grandma was one of the loves of my life. And so the grandma in the novel, who loves to bake, Nana, was inspired by my own grandmother. On the bottom right is a Holocaust survivor by the name of Jack DeGola. That's his family above. And again, his story really influenced the story of Yankel in my novel. So what am I saying? I'm saying, go ahead, utilize real people as your inspiration for writing. Think about those people that you really admire, and how can that influence your work. The other thing that I do that also helps a lot with my writing is I take photographs. And so it's really great then to go and reference those photographs later on. The assignment took place, the real assignment was actually in Oswego, New York. On the left is the actual library in Oswego. That became the inspiration for the library that my character Logan, where she worked. Now it's set on Lake Ontario. I wasn't at Lake Ontario in winter, but I live very close to Lake Michigan. So I went down, and for those of you who have read The Assignment, there's a scene where Cade leaves the inn, goes down a path, goes down, and he's standing on, an ice shelf. And so this helped me to incorporate my character within a setting. And we'll talk about incorporating setting with the actions of your character, because when you do a lot of description, it bogs the narration down. But when you bring the setting to life within the action of what the character is doing, that makes a difference. The house on the far right, that was my inspiration for Logan's home. So when you have that and you're able to go and look, it makes a difference for your character development. You can visualize and put your character in that space. So here is my full list. And why is this important? It's important because you should be incorporating all of these things in your stories. So the obvious is we tell stories with words. We still tell stories with action. There's music, songs, videos, YouTube, emojis, text messages, photographs, movies tell stories. The way a person dances or walks. If someone is walking in the hallway at school and they are walking alone and their head is down, or they're, they have earbuds in, it tells a story about them. Poetry, art, the activities that they belong to. There's the family that we have, and then there's the family that we create. Your writing, obviously, is a way of telling stories. Then there are friends, and we know, true friends are people who lift you up and cheer you on and believe in you. And then there are people that you may just hang out with, and that doesn't necessarily mean that they're a true friend. Body language says so much. How many of you have ever experienced in your life someone giving you a dirty look? They didn't even use one word. And then like later on, at 2 hours, 3 hours that evening, you're going, why did that person give me a look? What was that about? Was it something about me? And here you've already created this incredible narrative because of a look, just a look. And think about how much of your personal power you give over, how you worry about that look. What did it mean? How much power you give to someone over just a look. Gestures say so much. Smell, there's food, but there's also a situation where, you might have the kid that comes to class with the same clothes on every single day. And the tone of voice. So for example, I love you. I love you. Love you. So same words, but totally different meaning. Then sounds, something crashing, an alarm. Then of course there are dreams, our aspirations, and then there are the dreams that we have when we're sleeping. Don't forget the physical scars that we have, and then the scars that are within that we can't see. We need those, we need them both. Digging deeper is important. If you have someone that has a scar, let's say on, their wrist, you could say, oh, they have a scar on their wrist, but it's not interesting until we understand how they got that scar, why they got that scar. Were they, dared to climb up a tree, and, did they fall out? Understanding the deeper part of that story is what makes it interesting. Where you are, all of you right now, if you look around at your environment tells a story. Is it neat? Is it messy? Is it, does it need to get painted? How often do you walk through your house and do you find yourself not even looking at the things that are really on your wall or on your floor that tell stories? Look under your bed. There are so many things that are within your own environment that tells stories. And of course, the obvious, our appearance, our hair tells stories. I feel that when it comes down to appearance, the less we share within a novel to allow our readers to kind of, get a picture for themselves, I think that's healthy. And then pet peeves, and we're going to get into that, but pet peeves, I think says so much to a person's character. All right. Again, you can do this in the chat. You can also do it on a piece of paper. With every single character, I think it's really important for you to know what they value. If you do not know their values, then you don't know what shapes and what drives them. Their values makes all the difference. But you also have to understand their why. So for me, perseverance is a value because I'm a self-taught, writer. The last writing class I took was in high school. So persevering was something that was very important to me. And when I was writing Hello, I came up with a phrase, which was, perseverance is the act of true role models and heroes. And so that was something that I said to myself. And now if you actually like Google it or, put it in Twitter, you're going to see that it's been quoted, a lot of times. I find that so interesting. So, but you have to understand the why. For me, perseverance was important because I knew that I was self-taught. So what is it that your characters value? So if you would like to share your own values, I would love to, I'll share those with other people. Oh, I love Ellen had put down that overthinking and can create stories. So you can expand, and sometimes overthinking something can actually take you out of the story and create barriers. So be careful not to do that. If you have not written down 3 of your values, make sure you think about this and make sure you do that. Joyce said integrity is really important. And I would bet that Joyce has a really interesting why integrity is so important to her, why she chose that number 1. Being friendly, education, gratitude was Christine's. Ellen said compassion, honesty, and reliability. Yeah, and I am going to guess, and maybe Ellen will, perhaps confirm this, but reliability, I would bet that somewhere in Ellen's past, there were people that were not reliable. And so that became something, yep, okay. So you see how these things shape us? And so that's why our values are so important. I had a worksheet for you that actually said, know your character's values. It is a sheet. I wrote down all those values for you, so you have them. You don't need them. But now, how do values shape your characters or shape a scene? Now, this is such a simple scene, right? So I asked you on the worksheet, if you owned an inn or a bed and breakfast, what values would be important to you? And so I see that Rachel said appreciation, Michal said family oriented, Danielle said genuine, perseverance, and constant. So important on how these things shape us. So on your piece of paper, and you can feel free to message me also, if you owned an inn, so now you have to think about this for your own characters. If your character is, has a family business or is going on a road trip, you have to think about the values that go with that. So for example, if safety is a value to that character, or then someone that's, speeding along at 85, 90 miles per hour is something that's going to deeply stress out that character. But if that character, values being a daredevil, it's not going to stress them out at all. So understanding that essence of your characters. So for me, here's a perfect example. Whoops. Ta-da. All right, know your character's values. Cade, I need you to double check the bathrooms, make sure they're spotless, Mom says as I finish dusting the parlor. She leans over the reception desk, eyeing the room I just cleaned as if she could spot a speck of dust from this far away. The language clues you in. Cleanliness is extremely important to them, right? but also hospitality, making people feel welcome, making, people feel like this is their home. And so these were the kind of things, the values that I created, connected with Cade, with his family, but very, very specific to the fact that they own an inn. Now we all know this, and you're going, okay, I learned this, in elementary school. But I have a point to this. To write a story, you need to know the basics, right? Who, what, where, when, how. But really, the most important thing when it comes down to anything really in life is always why. My opinion. The most important question you must ask as a writer, a reader, a friend, or an observer, and as a human being is why. Why did this happen? Why are my characters doing this? Why is it important? I gave you as many why questions as I could possibly come up with. And that was part of that, the downloadable sheet. That should really help you. Why are you putting this, in the story where you're putting it? Why do I need this flashback? Do I need this flashback here? Why is that important? But think about this. If you have raised kids or have had little kids or babysat, you know that the question little kids are constantly asking is, why? Why are you doing this? Why are you doing that? And after a while, if you've taught preschool, I've actually seen, heard a preschool teacher once say, would you stop asking why? And I wanted to go, don't ever, stop a child from asking why, because children have that natural curiosity. But I have found that by the time they get into middle school, many kids stop asking why. And I think maybe it's because we as human beings find it annoying and we just don't want to have the patience to answer and ask why. But why means everything. So for example, if you have a character that's walking down the hallway and they bump into, someone, you have to ask why. Why did that happen? And I actually asked this question at a high school, and one boy raised his hand and he said, I have never told anyone this, but I'm blind in one of my eyes. And so I will bump into people because I don't see them. And people were like, and oftentimes people make an assumption like, oh my gosh, that person is so rude. They may even call them names, but we don't really understand what's going on behind the scenes. Your job is to open the curtains and let the reader in and see what's going on behind the scenes. If you look outside, when you go home and you look out the window, you don't know what's going on in the house, next door or the apartment next door. But your job is to open up those curtains and share those intimate, deep secrets, everything in such a powerful way because it shapes our characters' emotions. By asking why, you will discover how the answer gives deeper meaning to actions, reactions, objects, places, values. Dig deep. For example, what is your favorite food? Maybe someone would like to share their favorite food. Someone want to unmute and share their favorite food? Anyone?
Pizza.
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 Okay, Christine, why is pizza your most favorite food?
Because every Friday night for the past going on 5 years, my husband and I make our own pizza, starting with the dough. And we have pizza and we have a beer because it's Wisconsin and you have to have at least one beer on Friday night. And that is the reason I love it. We make all different kinds, so it doesn't matter what kind it is, but love pizza.
And my question to you is, the rest of the week, are you cooking together all the time, or is it just this Friday night pizza experience?
Usually one or the other of us cooks. We both love to cook, but Fridays are that special night where we do that together.
Excellent. And so do you see how the deeper why makes pizza interesting? Pizza is boring normally, right? Like everyone eats pizza for the most part, you know, if you can. And so, but what Christine shared with us makes it meaningful. And I remember asking this question again at a school, and one boy raised his hand and he said Chinese food. And he said that his mother worked 2 jobs. And whenever they had special time together and she was able to take a break, she took him out for Chinese food. And like, how can that just not like squeeze your heart, right? How that means something. That's your job. When you're writing your characters, you need to uncover this. Same thing with pet peeves. Does anyone want to be daring and share their most, like something that absolutely drives them like wild? Whenever it happens, you're just like, oh, I can't stand this. Anyone want to be brave?
Dishes in the sink.
Dishes in the sink. Lana, why does it drive you so crazy or so wild? I should say, I won't use ableist language. Why does it bother you so much when there are dishes in the sink?
I guess because like during COVID, the kids are all home, and I guess there was this assumption that someone else would do the job, meaning me, you know, and everyone needs to chip in. So yes, that's
Let me ask you something.
Yep.
So for the deeper why, do you feel better when your kitchen is clean
Of course.
and in order? So, okay.
Yes, it's
So
a reflection of my brain when the kitchen is clean. Yes.
And so you'll stop and make sure that it's clean before you do other things and that kind of stuff?
Most of the time, yes.
Most of the time.
Yeah, it's an excuse to break from the computer and doing my work to go clean up the kitchen. Yeah.
And is it also a distraction and you
Yeah.
know, and
Right.
and for some people, if they don't have a clean environment, it's going to, it makes them uncomfortable. It makes them feel that they can't do their work. And so to understand that deeper why, also, it could be that it's like, you know what? You're taking advantage of me and I'm feeling like you're taking advantage of me. I need your help. So, or it could be that, you know, they know mom is always going to do it. And, you know, so there's all these, when you dig deeper to understand, it makes it really interesting and shapes that character. So it's always so much more than just dirty dishes. It's the why. Why is it so important to you? Some people are like, sack of dishes, I don't care, it can sit for a whole week. It doesn't bother me. But for you, it bothers you. It's a pet peeve. The most interesting pet peeve I ever heard was, I cannot stand when I see someone's vanity plates on a car and I can't figure out what they mean. And I said, well, like, that's really unusual. Like, why does that bother you? And we kept digging deeper and deeper and deeper. And she realized that she had always been extremely good at math and had gotten straight A's. And then in 7th grade, sudden word problems became extremely difficult for her to solve. And she was so frustrated when she could not solve those word problems. And so as an adult, that frustration translated to vanity plates that she couldn't puzzle out and read and understand. So isn't that so interesting how something from childhood, you know, if you ask kids like, What is your pet peeve? When someone chews with their mouth open, which is a very common pet peeve, inevitably that child, heard at home, chew with your mouth closed, chew with your mouth closed, chew with your mouth closed. So it's ingrained in them and they're so in tune to other people. So understand the why. You can see why is everything. Now, this is an exercise I do with my characters. And you have this also in the packet. But you can do this, on a computer and just draw a line, do columns. You can, take 2 pieces of paper. But I always try to figure out, how do other people, and what I want you to do is I want you to think about yourself first. Because I think when you do it for yourself first, it really makes a difference and is helpful to understand. So when you do this for your characters. So I always start out with, how do others perceive me? Now, you have to understand that the way other people may perceive you can be a lie. It doesn't have to be true. So again, when I've done this with high school students, I remember one kid raised her hand and announced in front of everyone, there are kids at this school that think I'm a slut, and it's not true. And I was like, oh, and I'm like, well, there you go. How unfair it can be, how other people perceive you. And so I gave you a very, very long list of characteristics. And, it starts out from being thoughtful, compassionate, kind, popular, focused, empathetic. What you need to know about these characteristics is each one of them has what I'm going to lightly term positive and lightly term as negative. For example, one kid said, oh, my mother always says I'm stubborn. Just from the tone of her voice, it was very clear that she thought being stubborn was a horrible quality to have. But you know what? Being stubborn can be amazing, because she's the kind of person that, perseveres. She doesn't give up. She'll keep trying something until she solves it. And until we had that conversation, she was like, oh, wow, you're right. I didn't realize that being stubborn could actually be a good thing. So, again, it's like, how do other people perceive you? And this can be from your minister, your rabbi, your neighbor, your, ex-best friend, an ex, your in-laws, the clerk you see at the grocery store, because you think about the interactions that your character has, and you think about, okay, how does that teacher perceive that student? How does that student perceive that teacher? And then the next step, and I would say a minimum of 5 characteristics. And then you can write down, how is it a positive? How is it a negative? When we think normally that empathy is such a good quality to have, but if you're so empathetic that you can't fall asleep at night because you're agonizing and worrying about that person, now being empathetic is actually, it's harming you. That is taking empathy way too far. You're not helping yourself and you're not helping the other person. So here are all those words. If you, haven't done it or you need that, we will make sure that you get this. But I think this is so important with how, it shapes it. And Hannah and anyone else that, signed up late, I'm happy to make sure that you get all of this, because all of these things really, you might perceive yourself as being really mature, and a parent might think that you're really immature. So how does that, how does that impact your relationship with that person? Okay, and then you do the flip side. How do I perceive myself? So you would have your characters, right? You would write down for your characters. How does that character perceive him or herself or themselves? I just wanted to share, this was from my novel, Hello. I was actually talking about Emerson. So he says, how does he perceive himself? He sees himself as being smart, and he believes other people perceive him. So I had, that's a positive attribute. I had, I circled what was common between both sides. And then you underline what you would like to, change or work on, what is your character's struggles? So, for Cade, he was afraid, for Emerson, he was afraid to hurt other people's feelings. And so, that's a nice thing, but it also was a barrier for him with relationships, because he needed to get out of an unhealthy relationship. And he struggled to get out of that because he didn't want to hurt other people. Now, that's just one level. Again, it's the why that makes it interesting. Why is it that he didn't want to hurt other people's feelings? And so much of that, to reveal that, is what makes it so interesting. So don't just stop at this level, constantly be asking why. Why is he so smart? Is it just genetics? Or is it that people perceive that he or she or they are smart because they're working so hard? Emerson doesn't like PDA. Why is it that he doesn't like public displays of affection? So that's what's interesting. That's what makes, the heart of the story and the character. Now, each one of you, again, I went in depth with this. And this is creating realistic characters. And each one of these has very specific questions. And I broke it down from physical attributes. Now, remember, when it came down to, physical attributes, all right, I do not mean to offend anyone, but I want you to think about this. Instead of saying that your character is 6'2", a better way of describing it is saying, hey, Jim, will you come into the kitchen and, get that bag of flour on the top shelf for me? Now you know that he's tall and he can reach the top shelf, right? I didn't have to say he's tall, he's 6'2". I used description and I used action to give a physical attribute. So have your characters go beyond physical restrictions. For example, let's say you have a character who has a physical disability, and that character, has always been told that, they were incapable of doing something. Have that character do it. I'll share something personal. I was told always as a child, you're such a klutz, you're such a klutz, you're such a klutz. So I really believed it. And when I met my husband, I was 17. And at 18, he said to me, I'm going to teach you how to ski. And I said, nope, I'm a klutz. And he said, that's nonsense. Of course you can learn to ski. And so, private lessons, and, first day I was going down, a black diamond hill. So have those physical attributes or these belief systems, challenge them. Voice is so important. Does your character's voice match their personality? What is their personality? Why? Does your character have a distinct voice that belongs to them? Is there some catchphrase? If there's some kind of catchphrase, use it, but don't do it too often, because then it becomes annoying. A pet phrase, a favorite word. Again, you don't want to repeat it too, often, or a unique sound or a unique action. Does his words reflect their background? You could have someone in extreme poverty, and you would think that their life would be the most miserable life because of their environment, yet they're the happiest person. So again, why would that be? If that person is an artist, does their language, the way they describe things, reflect their artistic ways? Behavior. Now, a class clown. Why are they a class clown? Why are they deeply honest or moody or heartbroken? Does this person behave differently when they're at school, at work, with their parents, right? People behave differently around different people. So make sure to give depth to those characters, that you show that different behavior. I think one of the coolest things is when I see a character do something that is so beyond anything that I would ever expect from that character. So I remember reading a book by Huntley Fitzpatrick, and there was this really calm, sweet, nice boy, and he got so annoyed and so frustrated that he picked up a can and he threw it against the wall. And it was shocking. Like, it was shocking in the book, and it was shocking reading it. Know your character's strengths and weaknesses. Make a strength a weakness, a strength. Think about your own life and your strengths and your weaknesses. How do you push your characters and dig deeper so that they are able to achieve something that they truly don't believe that they can achieve? Know your character's passions. So passion is so important because it motivates. It also creates situations for drama. When a character, stumbles, when they're trying to achieve something that's important to them. Create crisis around their passion. Does their passion change? And make it unique. It could be that they have a passion for, China cups. And then why is collecting China cups so important? Maybe, it was something that a parent who, was a Holocaust survivor, and they go back and they, dig in the backyard of their home, and they had buried, a keepsake. So understand why something is of value. Setting, put your characters in unlikely settings. In my novel, The Assignment, I put my characters in the Safe Haven Museum and created a pivotal scene. Now, I can tell you, I toured that museum and I was thinking, how am I going to make this of value? Because, it's part of education. It became an alternative assignment. So I had to figure out, how can I make this interesting without, making it drag for the reader? So you incorporate it in. Crisis. There needs to be moral, a spiritual, a crisis of control. Each one of us loves to be in control of something, but sometimes we just can't be in control. So losing control can create a crisis. And then reaction. You know, we all have reactions, right? Think about if you have children, how you might like immediately deal with a child in one way, and then you calm down and you deal with that child in a different way. If you read the assignment, if you look at one of my secondary characters, Heather, you will see that Heather's father behaves one way, and then he reacts later a different way, and an unexpected way for Heather. You know, so Heather said, this is going to happen. I know my father is going to do this. Sure enough, that's how he behaved. But then something changed. And you have to know, why did that change? And finally, the resolution. Who is involved? Constantly ask yourself, who is involved in that resolution? Why? Create the unexpected. Did this character get what he wanted, what they needed? Did you create hope or despair? Does the resolution lead to more crisis or consequences that they could never have imagined happening? So, for example, in the assignment, there was no way that these teens could have ever realized that by giving a reporter an interview, that would lead to other consequences. So that's what you as the writer have to be thinking about. What are those consequences? Is your ending open-minded? If you're writing for middle grade and young adults, you know, often editors want the ending to be open-ended so that the reader can put themselves in that situation and come up with their own ending. And is it satisfying? You know, even if it's open-ended, did you, create a satisfying resolution? All of those things are important. Now, here is something else that you can do. Let's say the teacher is obviously very pivotal, a pivotal character in the assignment. He gives the assignment. So I had to do a lot of thinking about my Mr. Bartley and his relationship to these characters and the characters' relationships to others. So here's a situation where you put that character that you're working on in the center. And then you think about all those other characters that a particular character interacts with. And how is that? Does that character get along with this person and not another person? Do they ever interact with, all of these characters? Is there a way that you could slip it in that, a character interacts with someone without even necessarily knowing it and create a chain reaction of events? For example, bumping into that person on a beach, or, running into that person on a dark street, and you as the reader know that that character ran into that other character, but they don't know what had happened. And that now created a chain reaction because maybe they fell down, they broke their leg, and it was so inconsequential. But yet maybe now your character is going to miss a swim meet because they broke their leg. And so take those tiny moments that seem so insignificant and make them significant. One of my most, I'm not one to read, writing books, but I read this one because it was recommended to me by at least 3 or 4 people. And when I get like recommendations over and over again, this is called The Emotional Craft of Fiction. Now, if you read again the assignment, I feel that I achieved this goal, which was that when you're reading a book, if you find yourself so entrenched in that story, you will start thinking about your own life. It will pull you away from thinking about the characters and the character's story. And you start thinking about, wow, if I was given an assignment like this, if I had been given, this assignment, what would I have done? And now you are still in the story, but you're thinking about your own life. And suddenly you might be transported to 5th grade or 10th grade, and you're thinking about your own teacher. You're still in the story, but you have now made a personal connection. And it's those personal connections that make a story unforgettable, because you are thinking about yourself, you're thinking about your own life. You're thinking as a parent, what would you do if, my own child had received an assignment like this? Could I speak up? What would I have done? Would I, write comments for an article? Would I be more like a Heather or a Daniel or a Mason? Would I be a Kate? Would I be a Logan? So again, that powerful writing gets you connected so deeply that it becomes personal. We've all heard, the term mirrors and windows and sliding glass doors. The mirror reflects, is a reflection, and a door is, or a window is we're looking at someone else's life, and that sliding glass door, that's when you're, going between and also connecting it to yourself. And if you think about those memorable stories, to me, that's what does it. And in here, he says, showing and telling are fine as far as they go, but the emotional experience of readers has little to do with that. The most useful question is not, how can I get across what characters are going through? The better question is, how can I get readers to go on an emotional journey of their own? So it needs to be personal. And you can take the most mundane situation. Think about it. Most of our lives are mundane. But when you give it meaning, when it becomes purposeful. For example, Christine, and the fact that every single Friday night she makes pizza with her husband, and every time it's different. I'm thinking in my head about the emotional bond that they create in the act of it. And it's that emotional bond, the sharing, the being together, that creates the experience, that it's the conversations that occur during that act. Again, making pizza, mundane, ordinary, but it's what transpires within that action that makes it so interesting. And it's like, why is it important? We want to look at the emotional experience because it's how readers read. They look at it from their own experience. We all do. We make that connection. So I thought that was so important. Okay, research and character development. Remember I said I utilize at the very beginning, I said I utilize, real people that I know, but I also go on YouTube and I did research. And here's an example. For one of my characters, Peter Franklin, Lieutenant Peter Franklin, in my novel was inspired by Jack Taylor. And I'm just going to show like a few seconds of this.
In October 44, I was the first Allied officer to drop into Austria. I was captured December 1st by the Gestapo, severely beaten, even though I was in uniform, severely beaten. And
Okay, so I'm going to stop because this is something that you can see at any time. But you see, even his description, I was severely beaten. So don't hesitate to, go onto YouTube and get, and use that for reference and to understand your characters on a deeper level. I also, again, this was partially historical fiction. So I utilized real life, and then I can that from history and connected it to today. Here we have a poster that evokes emotion, right? What are you going to do about it? Stay on the job until every murdering Jap is wiped out. I utilized in this novel. How can you not have how could that not evoke emotion? Right? And we say to our students, okay, that's propaganda. What propaganda did you see today? What kind of racism do you see today? This was something put out by our government. They put Japanese Americans in internment camps. So again, this is a poster, it's a thing, but we make it and connect it to our characters on an emotional level. If you're not making that bond somehow, then you have to ask yourself, why am I putting this in my novel? Everything must have a why. I remember I beta read for an author, and she had a line that said something like, if I leave now, I will be home by 3 p.m. And I wrote in the margin, why is it important for her to, 1, leave now, and 2, for her to be home at 3 p.m.? And she went, oh, there's absolutely no reason whatsoever. And I'm like, pull it. It's not important. It detracts from the story. Here, Safe Haven Museum, again, going places, utilize setting and integrating that in to the novel. And here is a perfect example of how setting actually enhances the story. I'm not dragging down the narrative with description, but the description is actually important to the scene. So here it is. This is Logan. I push aside one of the 2 chairs Principal McNeil has in front of his desk and stand before him. Cade rests his hands on the other seat back. I motion to him with my thumb and announce, we have a problem. So you can see, with your mind's eye, the principal's office. The principal is, sitting down. There are 2 chairs. Cade and Logan are standing behind the chairs. They're resting their hands on those chairs, and they're not sitting them. And it says so much, it creates emotion. Finally, this is just on a personal note. I was writing the assignment. It was February of 2020. And I saw a tweet about ableist language. I had never heard the term before that moment. It's words like crazy, lame, stupid, deaf, insane, psycho, idiot, things that we hear on a regular basis. I personally made the decision to pull all ableist language out of my novel. Language evolves. Language, as we know, can be hurtful. And interestingly enough, as this transpired, Stacey Ramey, some of you will recognize that name, she posted on Facebook the following. I can't tell you how much this means. Beautiful moment, toddler awed by Target display with child in wheelchair like him. And the idea of, we hear this all the time, I stand with you, I stand with you. And I thought I had it in here, but I don't. The cover on my novel used to say, would you stand up for what is right? And it now says, would you speak up for what is right? Because there are many ways to speak up. One of the most profound is a rabbi. I watched a video and he has ALS, Lou Gehrig's disease, and he communicates by blinking his eyes. So there are many different ways to speak, but there's not always ways for people to stand. And so when someone says, I stand with you, there are people that can't. So if you would like, and you don't have, and you would like, please, I'm happy to send you for free a humankind welcome here, removable decal for your laptop, door, window, bumper. Happy to send it to you for free. And of course, feel free to follow me on any of the social media. If you've read the book and you haven't posted a review, post.